Kia ora koutou katoa, and thank you for joining us for our Kia World-Class New Zealander Speaker Series today with Veronica, Lysaght and Nigel Jollands. My name is Natalie, Kia's Marketing Engagement Manager, and I have the privilege of hosting this webinar today. Some quick housekeeping before we start. This webinar will be recorded and shared with you on our website. Throughout the webinar, please send through any questions you have using the Q&A function, as we have some time allocated at the end to answer these for you. As a bit of background, Kia is a non-for-profit organisation which was founded more than 20 years ago to connect Kiwi all around the globe. Today, the Kia community consists of around 500,000 New Zealand members, living in 185 countries. Our world-class New Zealand network is a vital part of this community, a unique group of Kiwi who are leading and shaping industries, raising New Zealand's profile on the world stage, and most importantly, giving back to the communities they live and work in. This speaker series highlights the incredible work these Kiwis do and also aims to inspire others to push the boundaries of their own goals and achieve some of the heights of success. So a bit about our speakers today who are joining us from the UK. Veronica is a leadership coach and the founder of Leading with Humanity, with a background in business, journalism and counselling. Nigel is an Associate Director at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, with over 30 years working on climate change research, action, policy and finance. Together, they are taking their love of sailing and a passion for climate change action and will soon be venturing on the journey of a lifetime as they sail home to New Zealand while raising awareness for climate change. So good morning, Veronica and Nigel, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Kia ora, kia ora.
So can you tell us how this idea of this incredible journey came about?
Okay, I'll start. So I've always wanted to sail home to New Zealand since well, not always, but we've been out of New Zealand now 17 years, and last 5-ish years I've had this growing itch to head home, and I thought I'd love to sail home. So I've been looking at boats. You know, I used to lie in bed with this, looking at boats. Veronica used to call it what was it, boat porn?
Boat porn.
Yeah. So I was always looking at boats, right? And then I came across this one boat, and this boat Novara, and I showed it to Veronica. Oh, I've got this amazing boat. Veronica said, "Oh, I'd sail home with you if we sailed in a boat like that." And that was the beginning of this sail thing. And then there was a sort of personal thing for Veronica.
Yes, so at the end of, Boxing Day 2018, I got one of those calls that as a Kiwi living abroad you don't want, which is loved one is in ICU, get your butt home on the next flight. And long story short, my sister passed away on the 6th of January 2019, and she was young. So it was that prompt to say, what are we doing with our lives, you know? So I came home and said to Nigel, you know that dream of yours of sailing home? Let's make it happen. And that's essentially, so we...
Then I freaked out and like, are you serious? I was just dreaming. I wasn't thinking about doing this.
It's not doing it for real.
Yeah.
But then we had a couple of caveats. We had one each, really, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yours first.
What was mine?
You wanted to have a purpose.
Oh, the purpose one. Yeah. I wanted to have a purpose. So I wanted to combine it with the climate and policy finance stuff that we've been working on. Oh, that I've been working on for a long time. So I didn't just want to head home via the Panama Canal. I want to use it as an opportunity to stop at communities. And
I kind of was like, well, I just didn't want to go home the ordinary way. I mean, the ordinary way is to follow the trade winds, go through the Panama Canal and into the Pacific. And I said, let's do something different. I had no idea what I was signing up for. So we thought about going via the Northwest Passage.
No, you suggested go via the Northwest Passage. I'm like, are you serious? Do you know what that means? That is mental.
Yeah, it is mental.
Yeah.
It's still mental.
It's still mental.
Yeah, it's a stupid idea. But anyhow.
Well, it is a very inspiring idea. So, you know, I think it's going to be fascinating to follow your journey, you know, as you make your way back home and, you know, meet all these different communities along the way. So, you know, I'm personally really excited to sort of see where it takes you. So what would have to happen for you to consider this journey a success? Because you've got a lot of plans sort of along the way. So tell us about that.
Okay, so
Well, this really basic one.
yeah, there's a basic one, like get to New Zealand alive. That would help. And you know, I say that tongue in cheek, but it's serious, I suppose, because we're heading to, you know, there are fewer people who have sailed through the Northwest Passage and have climbed Mount Everest. So it's a pretty challenging place to go, and people who normally sail in that sort of area have experience like Sir Peter Blake, you know, proper sailors and adventurers. We are not in that league at all. So we've got a big learning curve that we're going up already to make ourselves ready for that. And
I'd say the other thing to make it a success would be that we have partnered with multiple communities along the way to really to help facilitate their journey on adaptation.
So we're hoping in some way to, yeah, facilitate and empower them in some way to be able to act on their visions and their concerns around climate adaptation, because a big part of the challenge with many communities is access to resources and funding. And the last decade or more, I've been working on helping communities get access to finance, climate finance. And so part of that, we hope we'll be able to rock up and help people say, you know, okay, there's these funds, we can help you with the applications if that's appropriate, that sort of thing.
Great. And I guess a lot of those situations, it's sort of about, you know, not knowing what you don't know. So I think, you know, having an expert in that, you know, field and, you know, you being able to sort of share their stories will be, yeah, really helpful for those communities.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a nice segue into how we'd be working with communities, maybe jumping the gun a little bit, but you know, there's a real risk of us rich white fellas turning up in a fancy yacht to communities and appearing to, you know, that we're here to save you and whatnot. And I think we have a bit of a secret weapon, and that secret weapon is Veronica. Because, well, Veronica's a professional listener. And I think, do you want to talk a bit about well,
it's just the philosophy is that, you know, we don't yet know the content of what we will be doing along the journey, because the content is always going to be led by the communities, right? So we know, for example, that we're going to be facilitating conversations in Lerwick and the Shetland Islands in June, and about how the Shetland adapts to climate change, but we don't yet know what that will look like, right? Because we haven't yet had the conversation. And it is our role as first to learn, to be silent, to listen, and then look at what maybe some of those outcomes could be.
That reminds me, because we were reading the James Kerr's book, Legacy, about the kind of culture within the All Blacks. And that's where, and we came across that, point in that book about first being silent and listening. And that's going to be an important part of what we do, I think, in terms of connecting and understanding what we can offer.
Oh, that's, yeah, I'm sure will be much appreciated. And, you know, I think what you say is really important, going in and listening first, and then seeing, you know, opportunities for help, because that's how you, yeah, really understand the sort of problems that you may not have anticipated first.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you sort of touched on it before. I imagine there must be some apprehension about elements of this trip. So what are some of the bigger challenges that you anticipate facing?
You want to start?
Okay. Well, big waves is obvious, you know, weather. We will, on a journey of this size, we're not going to be able to always choose to be in good weather, right? So we are going to be in some gnarly weather that's going to be guaranteed. So that's kind of one of the known unknowns, if you like. I've been quite surprised already about the level of sexism that's come my direction as I've started on this journey, with people telling me all sorts of things from, well, basically, you don't need to go there. The fastest way to windward is on a 747. Well, hang on, it's my idea as well. To being ignored often, and actually having somebody abuse me in a sexist manner the other day. So when we were on board, so it has been a real learning curve about the culture of stepping into something that is very male dominated,
The sailing community,
the sailing culture, yeah. And not so much I hear in dinghy sailing, but in part of this world. Anyhow, so that's been that will be one of the challenges. So my response to that has been to say, let's get lots of women on board, and let's keep our board of advisors balanced gender-wise, and let's keep our crew balanced gender-wise. And that's one of our distinct aims that was not there when we started this.
Yeah, that's true.
We didn't realize that this was going to be an issue until we started doing the prep. Yeah.
Stuck in ice, it's a bit of a fear of mine. When we head through the Northwest Passage, when we attempt it, there's no guarantee we'll get through. We need to be prepared with 6 months provision, and to be prepared to be stuck on board over winter. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but I'm concerned about that. I think the challenging sailing environment is a big one that looms for me as skipper. And then there's the more personal stuff of leaving family and friends. Our daughter is here in Europe, so we'll be leaving her, and that's going to be difficult, I think. Yeah,
that will be hard. And there's also not only is it the leaving those we love, it's a change in identity. This is our roles have been very much bound with working internationally for a long time, and we won't have that profile, and we'll be changing what we actually do on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be unemployed. I've been a career man for 30 years. This is quite it's quite a personal change for me.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, Veronica, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm pleased to hear that you sort of got a plan to combat that. And I look forward to cheering you on from the sidelines as well. And I'm sure, much of your friends and family and colleagues will be eagerly sort of watching you along your journey as well, and sort of wishing you all the best. But
thank you.
Yeah, I know from my experience leaving a city job and taking a year off to go traveling, it was a funny transition going from sort of employed to unemployed, and traveling and not having I guess a sense of purpose, but you do. So I'm sure that will sort of keep you grounded and motivated. But just enjoy it. It'll be amazing. And and you'll be meeting a lot of incredible people along the way in some incredibly remote places. So how are you planning on working with those communities to ensure you can help them in the most effective ways? You sort of touched on it before, but have you got sort of a plan for that?
Well, we have a couple of aspects to that. First is that we have on our board of advisors, we have a professor actually based in Massey University, Professor Bruce Levovic, and he's been doing a lot of work on climate change issues in New Zealand, and particularly on the cleanup after Cyclone Gabriel. And so he has connections into some of the remote coastal communities. He was an author on the IPCC report on coastal communities. So some of those connections mean that we'll look at doing research. Well, research is the right term. We'll look at partnering with communities on their climate change adaptation plans. The other part is
Do you know what I mean? It's under the auspices of the UNESCO. Did you mention that?
no.
So he's developed this method to work with communities. He's trialing it in Whanganui, and so we'll be using that kind of process.
Yeah, and fundamentally, it's what I said before. It's about if we turn up and in the places where we've already made contact and we've got connections and we're aiming for specific events and we're doing specific things, that's fine. But if those places that we haven't got connections and we turn up and all we do is have a beer at the local pub and have a conversation about climate change and find out what the impacts are and tell those stories and ask somebody if they're happy to be interviewed to us to write a blog or to do social media, then that's great too. It's a range of what we will actually do on the ground. My background is in journalism, so happy to write up with those stories too.
Oh, brilliant. And if we bring the focus back to New Zealand now, in your opinion, what can we learn from other countries when it comes to climate change?
Yeah, interesting question. I wonder if it's the right. Well, there's stuff that New Zealand can learn from other countries, and there's the whole area of climate disclosure in the finance space that I can talk about. But then there's also what New Zealand can learn from its own experience as well. The whole Cyclone Gabriel and the forest slash stuff. And yeah, dare I say it, 30 years ago when I was working in Wellington in sustainable energy and climate policy, and we were trying to get Treasury engaged, and Treasury basically blocked a whole lot of policies regardless of the fact that they were cost effective at the time. The New Zealand government, I think, is learning slowly, but it's a bit bloody late, to be honest. 30 years too late. So needs to learn from those mistakes and move on. And I can see that there are some things happening. And people like Bruce Glavovic, working with coastal communities and communities that are affected by climate change. There's lots of learning going on there and kind of culturally appropriate, relevant stuff for New Zealand. And I think that's the place where New Zealand Inc. needs to look, is look to itself. And I'd say, and then there's the kind of the big stuff that can come out of the international multilateral world where I'm working. So the climate disclosure stuff in the financial institutions is top agenda at the moment where I'm working, mainly because I'm working in a multilateral development bank. So that means it's owned by governments, and the governments are pushing us. The private financial institutions around here, the big ones in the city, HSBC and so on, they're also moving slowly, but they're moving. And I think New Zealand, with the consultation that's happening on this climate disclosure stuff, is great. I just really hope that New Zealand financial institutions and New Zealand financial players take it seriously and get stuck in, because if the financial institutions take climate change seriously, then that's going to fundamentally change everything that we do, and New Zealand's ability to be able to implement climate action, because without the money, nothing's going to happen. And if the banks are pushing for climate action, then others are going to follow.
Banks and insurance.
Yeah, insurance, everyone involved in that kind of finance space. They're really where the rubber hits the road.
Oh, good food for thought. And hopefully, we're able to sort of get that sort of, focus here in New Zealand. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure everyone who hears about this project is as equally inspired as we all are. So what advice would you give to other Kiwi who are thinking about their own ambitious projects?
So this is directly a coaching question from my perspective, which is how do you eat the elephant, right? You commit. and you commit, and then you've find within yourself what it is that are the capabilities that you need to find to be able to achieve that project. And if you don't have them, don't be afraid to say, I don't have them. You know, I need support here. Like, I'm not particularly, well, I'm not an offshore sailor, full stop. I'm not. I do coastal waters, thanks very much. But I need to have on board people who are offshore sailors. That's it. That's what we need to be able to be capable. And I think it takes a dose of courage, because actually, once you have a dose of courage, then you can start to say, okay, I think I can do this. It starts to then become a bit of confidence that you can do this. But you're not going to get the confidence that you can achieve a project like this until you actually start with the commitment. Yep, I'm going to do it. And so that's whether that be a new job, or whether that be a new business, or an entrepreneurial idea to become reality, whether that be a relationship, you know, commit, have the courage to see through it, find the capabilities you need to keep going.
Yeah, and there's something about I don't know, it's so trite, isn't it? But feeling the fear and doing it anyway. It's such a cliche, but that's kind of the space that I'm in at the moment, right? Because I'm in the process of leaving my job. I've only got a couple of weeks to go, taking the leap of faith to go off and do this adventure. And you know, I have lots of time when I'm freaking out and thinking, what the hell am I doing? This is mental. I've got a good job. I could be there comfortable till I retire, you know. And yet I know that there's this itch I've got to scratch. And if I don't do it now, I would sit in my rocking chair in my old age and go, geez, what a missed opportunity. And I want to be sitting in my rocking chair going, man, that was a cool adventure. So there really is about feeling that fear and cracking on, just getting on with it, and acknowledging that it's there, and acknowledging that, you know, maybe it's not all going to work out roses like we hope. I'm sure it's going to be challenging. Well, it already is.
There's a lovely quote by Maya Angelou when she talks in her book, which is a letter to her daughter. She doesn't, anyhow, that's an aside. And she says... Who is she? Do you want to explain who she is? Well, she's a prominent writer in the US. And she, I'd say she's a Black activist woman. And she says, believing that life loves the liver of it, I have dared to do many things, sometimes trembling, but daring still. And for me, that kind of sums up what we're about. This makes us tremble, but still we are daring to do it. And maybe that's all adventures, whether they be, you know, small, large. The size doesn't really matter. It's the daring to step outside and do something that you otherwise might not have done.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, having that courage and understanding where you need help is really important. But it is, yeah, it's such an inspiring journey, and I think you'll have a lot of support around you, certainly. And you know, the fact that you're you know, making a big life decision, it is gonna, as you say, sort of change your identity, and I'm sure you know, you'll learn and grow along the way a lot as well. But yeah, it's, I think exactly what you've said, that's really solid advice for anyone really to sort of take into their own lives with, you know, new work projects or you know, life decisions. So yeah, lots to learn. Lots to learn.
There always is lots to learn.
Always, yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I guess this really is going to be an adventure of a lifetime. So what do you hope to learn about yourselves along the way?
I don't know how to live in a tiny space. We have gone from a 5-bedroom house to a 2-bed flat, and then we're going down to a
10 square meters.
10 square meter boat with 6 of us on board. How to be in a small space.
And I hope at the end of it, I've learned that I have the courage to do something like this, because I've dreamt about it, and I was kind of secretly hoping that it would just stay in the dreams, and I can. But now I'm actually having to do it. So
called his bluff.
Called my bluff. Yeah. So I learned that I can do it. At least I hope that's what I learned. What else?
I think it's I'd like to learn a lot about others, a lot about the other cultures that we go to, other ways of seeing the world. If you think of it in really basic terms, people say to us, what are the outcomes going to be? We don't know exactly what the outcomes are going to be. Where are you going to be somewhere? We have no idea. When will you be back in New Zealand? Don't know. Time, space, and outcomes are the things that we are going to have to leave behind. And we live in a world where time is dominant, and we kind of run to timetables. So we're going to have to run to the seasons, to the weather, and to the tides. And that's about it. And that's just going to be a huge, I don't yet know what we'll learn from that, but that will certainly be a different way of running.
There must be something real zen coming out of that, though.
Maybe I'll just learn to keep running.
Maybe. Another thing, just from a professional point of view, I've spent 30 years doing this stuff in governments and international organizations, sitting behind a desk, postulating about climate change and waving my hands around saying, policies this, policies that. And I think what part of the reason I'm doing this is to get out from behind my desk and stop postulating and get a sense of what is happening in other people's lives as they're affected by climate change, so that eventually I will be, if I get back into the climate change space, policy space, I'll actually have a better sense of what people are experiencing on the ground, and it'll make me a more maybe empathetic policy maker, policy designer, person involved in climate change than I am at the moment, because it's kind of all just numbers to me at the moment.
I think that's a really important point. And I think, I feel like New Zealand certainly experienced that possibly with the weather events that have happened this year, where it's been very easy to sort of say, all those weather events are happening elsewhere, all the cyclones, in America, or, the islands that are slowly facing, like an increasing tide. And I think it's been a real eye-opener for people back here, just to say, it is here, the impacts are here. We need to be, adapting and really sort of accelerating what we are focusing on. I guess I really hope that you use your experience and you get back into it once you move to New Zealand. So please do.
Yeah, just on a personal note, one of Veronica's family members lost their house and the cyclone was flooded out, and so we're seeing these things coming through the family WhatsApp group of images of their house that we're familiar with, all these things that we're familiar with, that I remember seeing, the place where the kids used to play, and the couches and beds and all that sort of stuff, now just outside in a heap covered in mud. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Yeah, it is.
And,
yes.
Having that sort of empathy and understanding for the communities that are facing these, these impacts, now. And I think, like you say, it's surreal looking at, the impacts that have happened sort of in New Zealand, and particularly along that east coast.
Yeah, yeah, indeed.
Yeah, it is.
Indeed.
It is.
So as a very novice sailor myself, I know how much preparation goes into an overnight trip away sailing, let alone a 2-year sailing trip. So what kind of preparation have you done to sort of plan for this trip?
Done or doing?
Look, the first principle is the boat is 26 years old, right? And every time we go out on her, something breaks. Every time. It may be minor, it may be major. But to expect to go step onto the boat and it still to be in the same nick it was in when you started that journey is dreamland. Just stupid.
Yeah.
So,
and this is a boat with relatively good nick for
yes,
its age, right? So
yes,
it's a thing to do with boats rather than just Novara.
yes.
Yeah.
So, well, you can talk more about the boat. You talk about the boat. I'll talk about other things.
So, well, but there's like several kind of categories, big chunks of stuff that we're doing. The boat preparation. We're basically rebuilding a lot of the boat. So we've completely rebuilt all the masts. They came out and we spent pretty much 12 months rebuilding them. They're like freestanding carbon fiber. Maybe would you be able to share a picture of Novara if people haven't seen it? And so we've been working for the best part of 15 months doing engineering stuff on Novara, and that includes the masts, all of the bilge work, pumps and motors and windlasses, and all those things have been reconditioned. So lots and lots of here we go. I think Veronica's about to share a picture of Novara. Lots and lots of engineering related work, and that is important. And then on top of that, there's crew training, because Novara is a really unusual or a different boat because of these. I don't know if people can see that. Maybe switch through a couple more to the end. There's one about Novara. Here we go. No, keep going. Here. So that's a good photo of Novara. So you can see that she's a schooner, 2 masts. They're freestanding carbon fiber masts. So we took them out. They weigh 3/4 of a ton each. And because they're these aero rig configuration, where the yard, so what would be the boom, but goes both behind the mast and in front of the mast, means the whole mast rotates.
It goes
around and around. So that means there are very few people in the world who are familiar with sailing Novara. So everyone who comes on board, we've got to train them up. And so we've been doing that now for 6 to 8 months, I suppose, building up a crew who can join us at legs along the way. And then what else? I mean, then this is going to be our home, and we are trying to make it a little more homely, because it's been a bloke's adventure boat for best part of a decade. And, we're going to be moving on and having things like luxury, like salt and pepper, and I don't know, comfortable bed.
And believe it or not, a piano.
Yeah. Well, keyboard.
A fold-out keyboard. So my Christmas present was to receive a fold-out keyboard. So it comes up to about that size and it folds out, and I can put it on the table and play. Yeah.
So that sort of home thing as well. A lot of
ukulele.
Oh yeah, my ukulele. I have been known to play the double bass a little bit, and it's a little bit too big to take on board the boat, so I downgraded to a ukulele. And then there's the whole victualling and provisioning.
Yes.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, I haven't done a lot of it yet, but it is a massive job just to think about food, to feed 6 people 3 times a day for months at a time. Yeah. There are 2 large freezers on board Novara. and
Day fridge.
and a day fridge, and kind of space behind every nook and cranny we can find to stack food in.
Yeah. And
we're doing some practical things, like I'm doing a radio course. We've both upgraded our first aid. We're doing a sea survival course with about 5 members of the crew on this coming Sunday. So that, there's a fair bit happening, really.
lots. And then we're extracting ourselves from London and selling up everything, list goes on. Natalie, we're driven these days by our to-do list, that's for sure. Yeah,
it's a huge process, packing up your life and getting everything ready. And I think I did a similar thing when I left London, putting everything into shipping and selling things, and taking everything to the charity shop, but trying to think about what you need for those different seasons. And you're going into cold weather as well, so there's a lot to sort of think about and prepare. But it looks beautiful, the locations and everything. It's just going to be fascinating to see.
Well, and one of the support things that we have as well is one of the preparation things has been an advisory board. So Steve Brown, who used to own the boat, I wouldn't say so much that, of course, we have purchased Novara, but we have more transitioned ownership from Steve to us. And without him, we couldn't even contemplate this. He will be our ice pilot. He will come on board for the difficult parts of the journey. And his skill is absolutely fundamental for us to be contemplating doing this trip. And we have some really wonderful people to support us. We've got Bob Shepton, who was twice awarded International Yachtsman of the Year. Pippa Lady Blake is one of our patrons as well. Professor Bruce Glavovic, who is involved in climate change work, particularly in New Zealand. Nisreen LCM, who is the friend of ours from Sudan when we were living there, and she is the UN chair of the Youth Advisory Group to the Secretary General on Climate Change. Victoria Jollands, who is a doctor in marine science in the Pacific, marine biology in the Pacific. So we have a good lot of people who can help us think our way out of what it is that we're going to be doing, and to make contacts and connections to make it work well.
Yeah. There's heaps of preparation. It's a bit overwhelming at the moment. We're right in the middle of it because we've got 2 weeks pretty much before I move on board. So it's full on at the moment.
And I've still got some international travel.
You've still got international travel, and
so anyhow.
Oh, good luck. I know those final few weeks countdown, it can get a bit overwhelming, but I'm sure you'll get there.
Yeah, we will. And my mum's coming to visit in 2 weeks, so it'll be much better when she gets here.
Great. Oh, we've got some time now for audience questions. So we'll open it up to everyone. But there is a question from Lynn in Korea, who isn't able to make the webinar but wanted to send in a question in advance. So Lynn is looking at alternative ways of travelling to avoid flying. And she's asked, is travelling on ships a good alternative? She's looking at ways to travel overland from Asia to Europe, and was wondering if you have any thoughts on how to travel as sustainably as possible.
Yeah, I think I can have a crack at that one. So my background, I first started working in EECA in New Zealand, Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority, so kind of an energy efficiency geek. And I also we've always lived in a place where I've been lucky enough to walk or cycle to work, so it's a really important part for me. I have a lot of international travel as my work at the moment, and where I can, I take a train. I've been to Vienna twice in the last 12 months by train. It's much better in terms of kilograms of CO2 per passenger kilometre, which is kind of the metric you use to see how energy efficient things are. Train is about 12 times more efficient than aircraft. So definitely train if you can do it, and shipping is even better. The problem with shipping, so that's in terms of the calorific value, energy use per passenger kilometre. Problem with shipping versus train is that shipping uses heavy marine diesel oil. So still, unfortunately, they're using pretty rubbish fuel. So it's pretty high pollutants. Like, I think shipping's about 5% of global total, 3 to 5%. Whereas trains, particularly in Europe, are powered by electricity. And in Europe, that's increasingly generated by renewables. So, it depends where you are in the world. I don't want to get too technical, but in general, flying, very energy intensive, lots of CO2 per passenger per kilometre. Trains, way better, shipping better, but the fuel type is not great.
So someone's asked about, you mentioned both the physical and boat preparations you've been doing. What about the mental preparation that you've had to sort of prepare for as well?
Should I do that? I'll talk about me, and then Veronica can cover her. She's way more prepared mentally than I am, I think, much more mature. For me, actually, because of Veronica's coaching background, Veronica introduced me to a coach back before the pandemic, who I've been working with. It's actually paid for by my work. Hell, I hope they're not listening to this. And he's been supporting me through this whole transition, and it's been really interesting. I use him as a sounding board and an opportunity to kind of dump my fears and anxiety. And that's been really, really important for me, just to get an independent person who just sort of listens to me and then reflects back what's going on and where I'm at. And so that's been important for me, is having someone I can talk to and process this stuff, because otherwise it just gets bottled up. And the other way I manage and do the mental prep stuff is make sure that I look after myself, which I haven't been doing so well recently, but I do exercise, make sure I keep exercise, otherwise the stress levels get high. What did Victor ask us back? A friend of ours.
Same thing. Yeah. What are we doing to prepare ourselves
mentally?
Yeah.
There's also, it's quite a skill to be a skipper on a boat, to be responsible for people and maintain not just the physical boat stuff as well. And I've skipped several thousand miles, but it's nothing compared to what others have done. And so for me, it's also about preparing myself to be a skipper in charge of a vessel with people's lives in my hands, basically. And that's a challenge, I think, but working on that one. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think, what am I doing to prepare mentally? I think one of the things that I'm doing is trying to savor the friendships and family that we have here, and to figure out ways of keeping those relationships going while we're on board. I'm keeping some clients as I go, but ones who, bless them, are very flexible about being coached from wherever I happen to be at a week's notice, rather than saying that it'll be Tuesday, the second Tuesday in the month at 7 p.m. So some of that is keeping my hand in, making me feel as though I've got a role which is outside of the boat. So it's not all consuming. Maintaining friendships, I would say, maintaining relationships with our daughter. And otherwise, the preparation is at the moment, it's a bit tough because it's about letting go of things. And I love London. I love, I like listening to music. So I love the fact that I can just decide on the day that I'm going to go and listen to something, and I can listen to it. And I don't find London's huge numbers of people overwhelming. I find they're quite inspiring most of the time. Okay, a packed tube doesn't do anybody any good, but most of the time I really enjoy London. So it's part of it is about just saying there is going to be some losses involved and acknowledging those losses, and that we have to be gentle on ourselves to say that it's okay that these losses are going to happen.
It is definitely an adjustment, and I know from when I left London, similar feelings. You build up a life there, and those relationships are really important. But I've been back twice now since I left, and it's so amazing being back there and rekindling those relationships and seeing those people, and I just love it. So you can always go back and visit, and
Exactly.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
I can leave London in a heartbeat. I don't care for it much. Big cities, not for me.
It is a special place, and that easy access to like you say, the music and the food and the people and everything. It's very different. Yeah, very different to back home, but you've got a lot to look forward to on your way.
Absolutely.
You mentioned sort of keeping in touch. How are you going to be sort of documenting and I guess sort of sharing your story as you travel along the way?
So we have documentary makers coming on board with us. We've got Instagram and Facebook up and running already, and we'll be promoting those. I'm an author, so I will keep writing and at some stage do something that is a bigger scale.
So there's all of those, right?
All of those are happening.
Blogging, Instagram. We've got we can share the screen again. Hang on. And here's our Instagram handles, Facebook and stuff there. So that's our website and so on. So we'll be doing that. We're also today I've been working on reconnecting. We've got Iridium pilot on board, so reconnecting all the satellite communications for the boat. And we're also putting in this 4G stuff as well. So basically we're hoping we'll have access to data right through the planet, wherever we are, so we can squirt out some short text-based stuff. We're not going to be squirting video or anything down the
photos.
or photos. No. But definitely we'll be doing the text-based blogging of where we're going.
Great. Looking forward to following your journey, and hopefully possibly reading a book in the future if that's on the cards as well.
Yeah, maybe.
So someone has said that they're delighted to hear about this big new and impactful project. What engagement and interest are you getting from Indigenous communities ahead of you on your route?
Not a lot at the moment. We have some in the Caribbean. Indigenous communities, and Greenland. We're just connecting to people in Greenland. We won't be, at the very earliest we would be in Greenland in August. So so we've got a number of months before we're getting there. So we're kind of using those connections to see who's interested.
The thing that we're doing, and particularly with Indigenous communities, is we have to be pretty mindful about this rich white folk kind of impression. And so, just like Veronica's saying, the using connections using the people who've already got relationships with them and being guided by them.
Yeah.
And they tend at this stage, our connections are through academics with the help of Prof. Bruce from Massey. And we've spoken to them all. They've been cautiously supportive of what we're doing. But I say cautiously because they're also aware that, Indigenous people, particularly Inuit and people in the Arctic, are at the focus of quite a lot of attention at the moment relating to climate change. So we're having to be really guided by them. And and at the moment it's pretty low key.
It's very low key.
Pretty low key, yeah.
At the moment. That's okay.
And I mean, it may increase, but that depends entirely on our intermediaries who are connecting with the communities on our behalf. Yeah.
And you might not have been able to give this much thought as you sort of, are so focused on, this upcoming journey, but do you know what's after your big voyage? Are there any sort of projects or things that you think might come about after this adventure?
Well, I think there's plenty of climate adaptation work to do in New Zealand. And I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Well, I think that's part of for me, it's part of the beauty, because I've been so planned with my career and that sort of thing. I've kind of had a sense of where I'm going, and there's always been like, there's the next goal. And I remember speaking to my uncle who passed away last year when he was diagnosed with cancer, and saying to him, this is so, what do I say, like, so not sensible what I'm doing. And he said, Nigel, you've been nothing but sensible all your life. Go and do something that's not sensible. And that's a bit what it feels like, and I have John's kind of picture beside my bed just to remind me about doing something that's not sensible. And I don't know who I'm going to be at the end of this adventure. I may come back and I decide I don't want to be a policy wonk doing climate change. I might want to be a full-time sailor forever. I don't know. Or maybe we get to New Zealand, like, I don't want anything more to do with boats. I just want a nice desk job, hang out in cafes. I don't know. I think for me, it's a bit of a luxury, really, to be able to have this opportunity to do it. And I'm not, I don't feel like I want to squander it in planning too far ahead.
Oh, well, yeah, it is going to be incredible. And I'm sure you'll have lots of time to sort of think about, all of the options, and you'll learn lots of way. And like you say, having that sort of on the ground experience will really, give you sort of some sort of tangible experience. So I'm sure there's lots for you to think about, and plenty of time to figure that all out as well. So I think that is us today. So I just want to thank you both so much for sharing your journey with us. We're really excited to see how your travels go, and look forward to welcoming you back into New Zealand in a few years. It's really great to hear more about what our world-class New Zealanders are achieving. Thank you, Veronica and Nigel, for giving us your time today. And to our audience, finally, a big thank you to you for joining us and posing some of the questions. We hope you've enjoyed the session, and just remember, a recording will be shared after this and also available on the Kia website. And
Right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
And thanks to Kia for all your support. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks to Sarah, who's here in London. We really appreciate the support.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure sort of helping you, and I know Sarah has done a lot of work with you. So a great on the ground resource for Kia. So a big shout out to Sarah too.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So the details of our next webinar will be in our monthly community newsletter. We look forward to seeing everyone on our next webinar. So Once again, Nigel and Veronica, thank you very much for joining us. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day in New Zealand.
thanks, you too. Mā te wā.